The grey December sky cast a somber mood over St. Jude Children's Research Hospital in Memphis, Tennessee, as a modest black sedan pulled into the visitor parking lot on the afternoon of December 20th, 1985. The car's occupant sat quietly for a moment, gathering his courage for what he knew would be one of the most emotionally challenging days of his life. Ozzy Osbourne, 37 years old, and at the height of his solo career success, had agreed to this visit not for publicity or image rehabilitation, but because something deep inside him had been calling him to do something meaningful with the platform his fame had given him. The visit had been arranged through Sharon, his manager and future wife, who had been quietly working with various children's charities despite the couple's wild public reputation. It was 1985, and Ozzy was still largely seen by the mainstream public as the dangerous madman who had bitten the head off a bat just 3 years earlier. The Christian organizations were still protesting his concerts, parents were still hiding his albums from their children, and the media still portrayed him as everything wrong with rock music. But Sharon had seen glimpses of a different man, someone who was deeply moved by stories of suffering, and who had an instinctive connection with people who felt like outcasts. The hospital staff had been nervous about the visit. This was, after all, the Prince of Darkness coming to meet their most vulnerable patients. But Dr. Patricia Williams, the head of pediatric oncology, had insisted that if these children found comfort and strength in Ozzy's music, then he deserved the chance to meet them face to face. If you're enjoying this incredible story, please subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. It helps us bring you more amazing moments from music history. Ozzy stepped out of the car wearing his most conservative outfit. Black jeans, a simple button-down shirt, and a black leather jacket, but no studs, chains, or theatrical makeup. His long hair was pulled back neatly, and his famous cross necklace was visible at his throat. At 37, he still carried himself with the restless energy that made him such a compelling performer. But there was also a vulnerability in his eyes that few people ever saw. The hospital's main corridor was decorated with Christmas garland and children's artwork depicting Santa Claus, reindeer, and winter scenes. The contrast between the festive decorations and the serious medical equipment was jarring, a reminder that for these families, the holidays would be spent fighting for their children's lives rather than celebrating around a Christmas tree. Dr. Williams met Ozzy at the reception desk, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and greying hair, who had spent 15 years helping children battle cancer. She had been working at St. Jude since it opened in 1962, and she had seen countless celebrities come and go. But something about this visit felt different. "Mr. Osbourne," she said, extending her hand, "thank you for coming. I have to admit, when we first received the request, I wasn't sure this was the right fit. But the children who asked to meet you have been talking about nothing else for weeks." "Please call me Ozzy," he replied, his Birmingham accent making him sound less intimidating than his reputation suggested. "And I have to be honest with you, Doctor, I'm terrified. I don't know what to say to kids who are going through something this serious." Dr. Williams smiled gently. "Just be yourself. These children have heard your music, and something about it speaks to them. Trust that instinct." As they walked toward the pediatric wing, Dr. Williams explained the hospital's mission and the specific children Ozzy would be meeting. St. Jude was founded on the principle that no child should die in the dawn of life because of race, religion, or their family's ability to pay, she said. "The children you'll meet today come from all over the country, and they're all fighting battles that would challenge the strongest adults." The first room they entered housed 14-year-old Marcus Thompson from Detroit, a young black boy who had been battling leukemia for 2 years. Marcus was thin and bald from chemotherapy treatments, but his eyes lit up when he saw Ozzy walk through the door. "No way," Marcus whispered, his voice hoarse from treatment. "You're really him. You're really Ozzy Osbourne." "That's right, mate," Ozzy said, pulling up a chair next to Marcus's bed. "I heard you were a fan of my music." "Fan?" Marcus laughed weakly. "Man, your music saved my life. When I first got diagnosed and felt like giving up, my older brother played me Shot in the Dark. That song made me realize that even when everything seems hopeless, you can still fight back." Ozzy felt something tighten in his throat. "Marcus, you're the one who's fighting back. I just sing songs. What you're doing, battling this disease every day, that takes real courage." "Can I tell you something?" Marcus asked, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Of course. Sometimes at night, When the pain gets really bad and I can't sleep, I put on my headphones and listen to Diary of a Madman. Not because I'm crazy, but because it makes me feel like someone understands what it's like when your own body turns against you." Ozzy was quiet for a long moment, processing the profound way this young man had interpreted his music. "Marcus, that song came from a very dark place in my life. I was struggling with addiction and mental health issues, and I felt like I was losing my mind. But if it helps you feel less alone in your fight, then maybe all that pain was worth something." They talked for 20 minutes about music, about fighting, about hope. Marcus showed Ozzy his collection of rock magazines hidden under his bed, and Ozzy signed them all, writing personal messages of encouragement on each one. The next room held 8-year-old Sarah Martinez from Phoenix, a girl with brain cancer who had lost most of her vision due to the tumor's location. Despite her young age, she had been listening to Black Sabbath for almost a year, much to her parents' initial dismay. "Sarah," Ozzy said softly as he entered the room, "I'm Ozzy. I understand you wanted to meet me." "I can't see you very well," Sarah said, "but I can hear you. You have the same voice from the records. Would you like to touch my hand?" Ozzy asked gently. "Sometimes that helps people know I'm really here." Sarah reached out, and when her small hand found his, she smiled for the first time in weeks. "You have calluses from playing guitar," she observed. "That's right. I've been playing for 20 years now." "My dad plays guitar too," Sarah said. "He learned all your songs to play for me when I'm scared. He's not very good at them, but it makes me feel better." Ozzy spent the next half hour talking with Sarah and her father, who had indeed learned dozens of Black Sabbath and Ozzy solo songs on acoustic guitar. The man was clearly embarrassed to be playing simplified versions of metal classics on a beat-up acoustic, but Ozzy was genuinely moved by the dedication. "You know what?" Ozzy said. "I think your dad's versions might be better than mine. He's playing them with love, and that's the most important ingredient in any song." But it was the third room that would change everything for Ozzy. Inside was 16-year-old Tommy Morrison from rural Arkansas, a boy who had been fighting bone cancer for 3 years and had recently learned that his treatment options were becoming limited. Tommy was gaunt and pale, connected to multiple machines, but he was sitting up in bed with a notebook and pen in his hands. "Tommy," Ozzy said as he entered. I know who you are," Tommy interrupted, but not rudely. "I've been waiting for you. I have something I need to show you." Tommy held out his notebook, his hands shaking slightly from medication. "I've been writing songs about being sick, about being scared, about not wanting to give up. I was hoping you might look at them." Ozzy took the notebook and began reading. What he found were lyrics that were raw, honest, and profound in a way that took his breath away. Songs about fighting when you're too weak to stand, about finding strength in the love of family, about accepting mortality while refusing to surrender hope. One song in particular, titled "Still Here," brought tears to Ozzy's eyes. "The doctors say I might not see 17, but I'm still here, still breathing, still fighting the machine. My body's breaking down, but my spirit's getting strong. I won't go quiet. I'll sing my own song. I'm still here, though death is drawing near. I'm still here, and that's something to cheer." "Tommy," Ozzy said, his voice thick with emotion, "these are incredible. How long have you been writing?" "Since I got sick," Tommy replied. "Music was the only thing that made sense anymore. When I listen to your songs, especially Bark at the Moon and Close My Eyes Forever, I feel like someone understands that you can be scared and brave at the same time." Ozzy spent an hour with Tommy, talking about songwriting, about the creative process, about how music could be a way of processing emotions that were too big for regular words. By the time he left Tommy's room, both were crying, but they were also smiling. The final stop was the hospital's common room, where a group of 8 children, who were mobile enough to leave their beds, had gathered. They ranged in age from 10 to 17, and they all had different types of cancer, but they shared one thing in common. Ozzy's music had become the soundtrack to their battles. "Mr. Osbourne," said 15-year-old Lisa Chen, who was battling lymphoma, "we have something for you." The children had arranged themselves in a semicircle, and at Lisa's signal they began to sing. Not one of Ozzy's heavy metal anthems, but a gentle acoustic version of "Mama, I'm Coming Home" that they had arranged themselves. Their voices were thin and sometimes shaky from treatment, but the emotion behind the words was powerful enough to fill the room. As they sang the chorus, "Mama, I'm coming home," Ozzy realized they had changed the meaning of the song entirely. For these children, home wasn't a place you returned to, but a state of peace and love that existed even in the midst of suffering. They weren't singing about coming back from a journey. They were singing about finding home wherever love existed. When they finished, the room was silent except for the soft sound of Ozzy crying. He had performed for millions of people, had heard crowds of 100,000 sing his songs back to him, but nothing had ever moved him like these 8 children singing in a hospital common room. "That was," he began, then stopped, unable to find words. "We wanted to give you something," said 13-year-old David Kim, who was dealing with brain cancer. "You've given us so much through your music. We wanted to give something back." "You just did," Ozzy managed to say. "You just gave me the most beautiful performance I've ever heard." "We have one more thing," Lisa said, producing a hand-drawn card signed by dozens of children throughout the hospital. On the front was a surprisingly good drawing of Ozzy on stage, but instead of the usual demonic imagery associated with his performances, the children had drawn him surrounded by light, with the words, "Thank you for helping us fight," written in careful, childish handwriting. Inside the card were dozens of short messages. "Your music makes me feel strong when I feel weak. Thank you for understanding what it's like to be different. Your songs helped me through my worst days. You make it okay to be angry sometimes. Thank you for showing us that darkness doesn't have to win." As Ozzy read each message, he felt something fundamental shift inside him. For years he had been told that his music was dangerous, that it corrupted young people, that it promoted darkness and despair. But here were children who had found hope and strength in his songs, who had used his music as a weapon against their own mortality. "I don't know what to say," he finally whispered. "You don't have to say anything," Tommy said. He had been brought down from his room in a wheelchair to join the group. "Just promise us you'll keep making music. Promise us you'll keep singing for people like us, the ones who need to know they're not alone in the dark." That evening, as Ozzy sat in his hotel room, he called Sharon and told her about the day. He cried as he described each child, each song, each moment of connection that had reminded him why music mattered. "Sharon," he said, "I've been thinking about quitting. The protests, the criticism, the constant pressure to be this character people expect me to be. I'm tired of it all. But today those kids showed me something I had forgotten." "What's that?" "That music isn't about image or controversy or shocking people. It's about connection. It's about reaching people who feel lost and letting them know they're not alone. Those children found strength in my songs, not because the songs are perfect, but because they're honest about struggle and pain and the possibility of survival." The visit to St. Jude changed the trajectory of Ozzy's career and life. He began making regular visits to children's hospitals around the world, always quietly, always without publicity. He started a foundation to support families dealing with childhood cancer, and he began writing songs specifically inspired by the courage he witnessed in these young patients. One of those songs, "Little Warriors," became one of his most beloved compositions, though it was unlike anything else in his catalogue. It was gentle, hopeful, and dedicated to all the children who fight, battles bigger than themselves with courage that puts adults to shame. But perhaps the most profound change was in how Ozzy understood his own purpose as an artist. The children at St. Jude had shown him that his music could be a source of strength rather than just rebellion, hope rather than just anger, light rather than just darkness. Tommy Morrison's song, "Still Here," particularly haunted Ozzy. With the boys' family's permission, he collaborated with Tommy to record a version of the song, with Tommy singing lead vocals and Ozzy providing guitar and backing vocals. The song was released as a charity single, with all proceeds going to St. Jude, and it became one of the most moving recordings of Ozzy's career. Tragically, Tommy passed away 3 months after the recording session, but not before hearing his song on the radio and knowing that his words would continue to inspire other young people facing their own battles. At Tommy's funeral, Ozzy sang "Still Here," acoustic, his voice breaking as he delivered the words that this brave teenager had written. "I'm still here, though death is drawing near. I'm still here, and that's something to cheer." The impact of that day at St. Jude rippled through Ozzy's life for decades. He continued visiting children's hospitals well into his 70s, and he often said that those visits were more important to him than any award or achievement in his musical career. "Those kids taught me what courage really looks like," he would reflect years later. "They taught me that my music could be medicine, that entertainment could be ministry, and that sometimes the most important audience isn't the biggest one. It's the one that needs you most." Sarah Martinez, the girl who had lost most of her vision, would go on to beat her cancer and become a music therapist, using the lessons she learned from Ozzy about the healing power of song. Marcus Thompson survived his leukemia and started a non-profit organization bringing live music to children's hospitals. Lisa Chen became a pediatric oncologist, inspired by the doctors who had saved her life and the musician who had shown her that healing could come through unexpected sources. The hand-drawn card the children gave Ozzy that day remained framed on his desk for the rest of his life, a constant reminder that the true measure of an artist's success isn't fame or fortune, but the lives they touch and the hope they help kindle in the darkest moments. Years later, when critics still questioned the value or appropriateness of heavy metal music, Ozzy would simply say, "I've seen children facing death find strength in these songs. I've watched teenagers battle cancer while singing these lyrics. If that's not sacred, I don't know what is." The Visit to St. Jude in December 1985 became legendary, not because of any wild rock star antics, but because it showed the world a different side of the Prince of Darkness, a man whose music could heal as well as rebel, who could comfort as well as shock, and who understood that the most powerful performances sometimes happen not on stage, but in hospital rooms where young warriors fight their greatest battles. Thank you for reading this heartwarming story about the healing power of music and the courage of children. If it touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel and hit the like button. It helps us continue sharing stories that remind us of the extraordinary strength of the human spirit and the unexpected ways that art can heal.